Yeah, that's what I said.
You mentioned about Mesiras Nefesh. I wanted to add, actually, I was thinking about it. That we're talking about yesterday, the act of mitzvahs, even in a time when it's no revelation, and when it's not it's lacking the beauty and joy that would be the times of the temple. So it's interesting that one of the virtue of the mitzvah done in a time of exile, even though it lacked the beauty and the joy and maybe the revelation that there is with the temple time, is this factor of Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. Isn't that notwithstanding the fact that the Jew doesn't necessarily feel everything that he would have felt in the temple times, he's willing to give up his life for it. Which is the story of Purim, as you mentioned. That's the whole story of Purim, and that's Chanania Mishael and Azaria, and that's been our story through history. So the redeeming factor in the horse is the Mesiras Nefesh, is the self-sacrifice.
And also the story represents the destruction. The horse represents the
right. The horse is both strength in a positive and
versus the Jews.
So it's strength in a positive and strength in the opposite. Okay. Now we get to, thank you for that. Now we get to Tzadik Gimel with Aleph 93a. If you count 4 lines down from when the line gets wider, and there's 2 dots, so it begins a kind of a new section. But it's if you will, we're going a little further down the detour. Right. This whole discussion, this tractate, this chapter is dedicated to the resurrection, and from there it went off to the resurrection of those in the valley of Dura, who were revived at the same time when Chanania Mishael and Azaria were thrown into the furnace, and thus we went on a detour there, and now we're going on a further detour down that line.
You said 4th line?
4th line from when the lines get wider, the 5th word. There's 2 dots, and it says Rabbanon.
Oh yeah, okay.
Got it? Colon, is that what it's called?
Cool.
So the Gemara asks like this: Rabbanon, and these sages, Chanania Mishael and Azaria, Lahecha Azlu, where did they go to? After the story, there's no mention of them in Scripture. Where did they go? I mentioned this yesterday, that there are a number of different books in Scripture that happen around this period in time. You have the book of Daniel, the book of Zechariah, Nehemiah, Ezra, even Mordechai, Megillah, and Malachi, and you have other number of times where certain characters cross over between books. They're mentioned in different Sfarim. But Chanania Mishael and Azaria, after the story, aren't mentioned anywhere. So the Gemara wants to know, where did they go to? So the Gemara now gives 3 different options.
Why is there a round bracket and then a square bracket?
So generally speaking, the rule with round bracket and square brackets is that the round bracket is the way they found it, and the square bracket is the way it ought to be. Because Azul means he went in the singular, but if you just put the vav behind the lamed, Azlu, it means where did they go in the plural.
Okay, since we're talking about 3 sages.
So it should be in the plural. So generally speaking, square and round brackets is what it means, as a rule, anywhere. In Torah literature, it means the round brackets is what they found and written, and square brackets is what it ought to be. That's usually the rule. I'm sure there are exceptions to that, but that's generally the rule. Okay, so the Gemara wants to know where they went to. Where did Chanania Mishael and Azaria go? After the story, we don't see them anywhere. We don't hear of them. So the Gemara now gives 3 different views, and obviously we're going to begin with the literal interpretation, and then it almost begs for explanation. At least one of the 3 cannot be literal, as you'll see in a minute. And if one of the 3 are not literal, then we have to think of how the other ones also have deeper messaging, and we'll see if we can come with something. So here's the 3 options. The first one is Amar Rav. Rav says, Ba'ayin hara mesu. They died as a result of the evil eye. Meaning to say, the evil eye, ayin hara, that's usually called, is based on jealousy. And when these 3 emerged from the fire unscathed, there's lots of jealousy from their fellow Jews, and this caused, they died because of jealousy, because of the ayin hara, the evil eye. One view. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Beroik tubu. They drowned in spittle. Spittle from who? So the Gemara doesn't say this, but it's right. Rashi comments. The Gemara mentioned before that after Chanania Mishael and Azaria emerged from this fire unscathed, all the nations of the world hit the Jewish people, Tafhu Balpneim, they hit them in saying, you have such a God, and you were worshipping the idols, the graven images that Nebuchadnezzar built. So apparently, in addition to hitting, they spit the nations of the world. And thus, Chanania Mishael and Azaria drowned in the spit. So I mentioned before that one of the three is clearly not literal. I would imagine this is it. For this to be literal, you'd have to have a pool where all the nations of the world are spitting into the same place, making enough water, and someone's holding them down. The literal interpretation of this is very difficult to envision. So just from this one itself, it indicates to you there's more going on here. But I'm just telling you what the Gemara says in its most plain translation. So they drowned in the spit of the nations who were scoffing at the Jews, that you have such a God, and here you are worshipping other idols. Okay. View number 2. View number 3 is Rabbi Yochanan Amar, who says, Allah Yisrael, they survived and moved to Israel. They emigrated to Israel along with Ezra and everybody else. But Nasu Nashim, they married women. V'alidu banim, banais, and they had sons and daughters. It would seem like they weren't married before. Married and had children and sons and daughters after.
Weren't they quite young when it happened, though?
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know the age. What is it? Does the scripture imply how old they were?
Originally, when they were taken from Israel, they took the youth of Israel.
So how old were they at the time? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, but pretty young.
They came back and they had sons and daughters, children, sons and daughters. They survived like everybody else. And the fact that they're not mentioned, the Gemara is going to say soon how there's an allusion to their being in Israel. So these three opinions were stated by three Amoraic age sages, Amoraim, which means Gemara age sages of the earlier generation, the first and second generation of Gemara scholars, but nonetheless Gemara scholars nonetheless. So the Gemara says, Katanoi, these three views fall in line with three views that we found in the Mishnaic age text. And therefore the next text is basically a repetition, but instead of it being Amoraic Gemara age scholars speaking, it's Tanaic Mishnaic age scholars. Clear on this? Okay, so Katanoi, these three views follow the three views we have in Mishnaic age text, which reads, Rabbi Lezer says, Ba'ayin harames, they died with evil eye. Rabbi Yeshua says, Beroik tubu, they drowned in the spittle of the nations who were scoffing at the Jewish people. And the sages say, Allah Yisrael, they emigrated to Israel. Nasu Teretz Yisrael, to the Holy Land, and Nasu Nashim, they married women, and they had sons and daughters. But here, this Mishnaic age text brings a proof text to this third view, that they emigrated to Israel. Namely, Shenemar, as the verse reads in Zechariah. Right, the Gemara's premise for this whole discussion was that after the story of them emerging from the fire, there is no mention of them in Scripture. So here the Gemara is quoting a verse that alludes to their existence in Scripture, and specifically that verse, that passage is talking about the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. And what does the verse read? The verse reads, Shimuna Yeshua Kohen Gadol. Listen here, Master Yeshua, the High Priest. Ata v'reyecha yeshim lefanecha. You and your friends who are sitting with you or before you, ki anshi moifis hema, for they are men of significance. That's what anshi moifis means. They're men of significance. But the word moifis, which we translated now as men of significance, also means moifis means a miracle. In fact, moifis is a kind of miracle that's like extraordinary. It's a wonder. It's a moifis. So not just they're men of significance, but anshi moifis, they're men of miracle. They're men of a miraculous nature. And if the Gemara comments, who are these people who we can describe them as miraculous people? Have Omer, it would follow that they are Chanania Mishael and Azaria. This is Chanania Mishael and Azaria. And in fact, later the Gemara is going to talk about Yeshua Kohen Gadol as also having emerged from a furnace under Nebuchadnezzar. The Gemara will give us the background in the story with that later. But in the same way, the verse is putting Yeshua Kohen Gadol, Yeshua the High Priest, together with friends who are Anshe Moifis, men of miracles, so it would follow that all four of these had a similar kind of miracle. And thus the friends that the verse is alluding to is Chanania Mishael and Azaria, and this therefore is an allusion to Chanania Mishael and Azaria being mentioned elsewhere in Scripture even after their emergence from the fire, and this is the proof text for the view that said that they emigrated to Israel and had sons and daughters. So perhaps to understand a little bit what this means, I'm asking you to help me flesh this out, but perhaps maybe the Gemara is talking about three levels of a tzaddik in relationship to his fellow Jew. So the first one is that they died in Ayin Hara. Ayin Hara, as we said, is jealousy. Is jealousy from whom? From other Jews. So dying could mean what kind of pain did they endure in life that brought them to their end, so to speak. So one set of pain, or the first level of pain, is from other Jews. The jealousy of other Jews. So which would mean that these are the kind of tzaddikim, the kind of righteous people that are somewhat separate from the rest of the Jewish people. A tzaddik is a tzaddik in his private life, but there's a separation between him and his fellow Jew, and thus there's a jealousy between the two of them. It's one level of tzaddik. They're righteous, they emerged from a fire unscathed, so they were willing to give up their lives rather than bow down to serve idol worship, but yet there's still a distance between them and their fellow Jew. It's jealousy. One level of tzaddik. The next level of tzaddik is, what do they die from? They die from the spittle of the nations of the world. So what was the pain they carried in life? The pain they carried that brought them to their death is the pain of the nations of the world bothering the Jewish people. Because who were the nations laughing at? Not them. The three of them that weren't being laughed at because they didn't follow the idol worship. The nations of the world are scoffing at the rest of the Jewish people. All of you have such a great God, and here you are worshiping idols. So here are three tzaddikim who carried the pain of other Jews.
Here we are supposed to be a light unto the nations.
And the nations are throwing it back in our face.
They're saying, you're not a light to them. Look at you. So
Right.
That's their anguish is that.
But not because they did anything wrong.
Right.
So here's a deeper level of tzaddik, not the separation between them and the Jew, like them and their fellow Jew at the first level where their fellow Jew is jealous of them. They actually carry the pain of their fellow Jew. Their fellow Jew is being tormented by the nations of the world. That's what causes them pain. Next level of a tzaddik.
There is no other. The other is part of every one of them.
Part of every one of us. And if my fellow Jew is being scoffed at by the nations, it's painful for me too. Even for Chanania Mishael and Azaria, who aren't being laughed at by the nations, because they didn't give in to the idol worship.
But they're being tormented for good reason.
Who?
Because they're fellow Jews.
Yeah. But what we're saying is that here the Gemara is saying that they...
Not just that they're being tormented, but the cause, my fellow Jews have caused...
So they are...
have given them reason to torment us.
They are being empathetic with fellow Jews who are sinners. And that's the cause of their pain. Right? The Gemara says they drowned in the spittle of the nations. Right? In other words, what killed them is what the nations are doing to their fellow Jew, even though they're sinners. So it's a deeper level of a tzaddik, who's not separate from his fellow Jew, but one with the fellow Jew empathetic to the point that he dies in their pain. Then there's a third level of a tzaddik, who not only carries their pain, and not only dies in their pain, but actually has the strength to emerge with them. All Eretz Yisrael, they went up, emigrated to Eretz Yisrael. That's the third view. The third view is that they actually emigrated with their fellow Jew. So not only did they absorb the pain, as it were, of their fellow Jew, but actually able to withstand it and rise up with their fellow Jew to move back to Eretz Yisrael. So perhaps it's three levels of a tzaddik. One is a tzaddik on his own right, but it's possible other Jews are jealous of them. Another level of a tzaddik who's empathetic with his fellow Jew, and that's where his great pain comes from. Another one, the highest level of tzaddik is the one who can even transcend that and go up with Alu, can emigrate, but the way you say emigrate to Eretz Yisrael is Alu, they make Aliyah. Aliyah means to ascend. They ascended, meaning they've risen up over and above the trouble with their fellow Jews up to Eretz Yisrael and marrying and having children and offspring. So perhaps this is one way of understanding this Gemara on a little deeper level.
It could also be that simply that they died right away in front of the first two views, but the third view
They lived happy, long lives.
Exactly. They went on in life, but the miracle didn't affect them. But it seems to me in the first two cases, you can argue because it didn't elevate the Jewish people, either Ayin Hara or the non-Jews taunted the Jews, but the Jews didn't seem to have any rebuttal, so their miracle caused the Jews to be in a sort of a bad state. That's why Hashem may have punished them. But just in the other case, simply they kept a low profile and they went to Israel. Because remaining in Babel would have been a constant thorn in the eyes of the Jews and the non-Jews as well. So they went to Israel and kind of led a normal life afterwards. And so he mentioned the thing in secular as well. So someone's a hero. What does he do afterwards? Some just go back to normal life, or some because of their heroism it caused a lot of animosity amongst people. So they become instead of a unifying factor, the dividing factor. Yeah. That's what they get the point of teaching like a psychological lesson. Another way of looking at it.
Okay, now the Gemara gets to. We'll begin this Gemara. I'm going to translate it literally today. I've tried to put some thought into understanding something deeper than the literal translation. I haven't been no strike of great inspiration yet, so maybe. But I'll translate what it says here. It's an interesting Gemara, and certainly.
Observation.
Sorry?
Amoraim word add in Tanaim
actually. There's one thing that Tanaim add.
No,
the verse.
No. The Amoraim, the Tanaim, I understand, but why more mention Amoraim at all? They didn't add anything at all to the story.
It could, yeah. Well, it could just be it's also possible that the Amoraim speaking didn't have that text yet, and later the Gemara introduces it and saying that these things follow earlier texts which we found later. That's a simple way of understanding how that happened.
We could edit just simply read to Tanaim. The Gemara doesn't give us any more information.
Yeah, that's an interesting point also.
Unless we want the names to use another Gemara.
That's one interesting point. Another point is that the Mishnah mentions a text, a proof text, but the Gemara doesn't.
Exactly. So there's much more weight.
So there has to be
historically as well as the information, because the Amoraim had nothing to do.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
It's not even a change.
It's the exact same language, exact same wording.
So I mentioned it.
Interesting. That's interesting to think about. I'll just put that out there if you want to think about this a little bit more, that the Amoraim are in Bavel and the Tanaim are in Eretz Yisrael. So there's a different perspective when you're talking about these people, whether you're sitting still in exile, where the negative happened, or you're in Israel where things are redemptive already. So maybe there's a change there. Anyway, okay, so let's learn the next Gemara, at least on its literal level, and then we'll see we'll see if something happens. As I mentioned, I'm still waiting for. Try to think about it a little bit more over the next day or so. See if we can come up with something. So the Gemara asked, "Daniel lehechan azal." Where was Daniel when Chanania Mishael and Azaria were thrown into the furnace? Certainly, he didn't bow down to the idol worship, and yet he wasn't brought forward to be thrown into the furnace. He should have been. So where was he? So the Gemara gives a few different options as to where he was. Now, this Gemara, at least on its face, has to be taken literally also. The previous one also, at least to some degree, has to be taken literal, in that they died soon after, they died later. Even if you're not going to say they actually physically drowned in spittle, but just looking at to say they died, it's literally, either in Bavel before they had time to emigrate, or they emigrated. The next Gemara also has to be taken literally, because Daniel had to be somewhere. He had to be somewhere when this was all happening. So where was he? So the Gemara says like this. Omar Rav says, Lemichra Nara Rabba B'Tvarya. Where was Daniel? He was digging a great river in Tiberias. No further explanation. That's where he was. While Chanania Mishael and Azaria being thrown into a furnace in Bavel, he's in the north of Israel digging a well, digging a river.
Digging a river?
That's what the Gemara says. Digging a grand river in Bavel. I'll tell you what it says. So I'm saying I've been thinking about it and let's try to put some more thought into it. Look at some of the Mefarshim to see if there's more, because I'm sure there is, but this is what the Gemara literally says. He's in Tiberia digging a great river. One view, the same three people speaking as there was before. Shmuel says, La suye bizra das pasta. Daniel was gone on a trip to bring a special kind of spice or grass that's good for animals, some fodder of some sort. Nebuchadnezzar sent him to go bring that stuff. Steinsaltz has a translation for what it's called. It is, what do you say? Alfalfa seed.
Alfalfa, yeah.
That's what, I don't know what alfalfa is.
Alfalfa is
Healthy stuff.
Yeah, but
what is it?
Primarily
Sprouts.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's usually for alfalfa for animals.
Yeah, Rashi says that it's
animal food.
Rashi says that it's animal food. Yeah, but I didn't know what alfalfa is. Okay, so this is where he was. View number one, he was digging a river. View number two is he's planting alfalfa seeds. He's bringing alfalfa seeds on Nebuchadnezzar's command. Rabbi Yochanan, view number three. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, "Lasui chaziri to Alexandria shemitzrayim." He went to go import pigs from Alexandria in Egypt. Apparently, there were very good pigs there, and he went to go bring them. This is the Gemara on its literal level. It's interesting that these three people are the same three people speaking before, and maybe that's why the Gemara quotes them, to tell you that they align. So I'm just thinking, as we're thinking about how to understand this Gemara, we have to think about how we understand the previous Gemara and to see if we can line them up as to what happened to Chanania Mishael and Azaria after, and where Daniel was at the time. It's the same three people speaking, so maybe there's some connection. But this is the Gemara literally. Either he's digging a river, or he's bringing alfalfa seeds on Nebuchadnezzar's command, or he's bringing pigs from Alexandria. Now with these pigs from Alexandria, it gets even more, it gets even better. The Gemara says like this: Aini, is that the case? Could have Daniel been gone in Alexandria importing pigs? Vatanya, we've been taught in the Mishnah H text, Tudus Haraifa Omar, a certain doctor, presumably Jewish doctor, named Tudus, said, Ain part of a chazir yotzim Alexandria shemitzrayim. There is no cow or pig that would leave the capital of Egypt at the time, Alexandria. She'ain chaytkina aim shalah, which they don't neuter, or not neuter. What's the word? They removed the like of a sect. Not of a for a woman. What's it called?
Hysterectomy.
Where they remove the uterus, where the person can't. Hysterectomy.
Yeah.
So they would do that to the cows and pigs in Egypt, because they wanted to keep that they shouldn't give birth everywhere. Sorry. That's right, that's my answer, yeah. So they shouldn't give birth, right? Alexandria wanted to have control over these choice pigs and cows that they were raising, so they wanted to have a monopoly on the market, so they would not let any animal leave the city without it being incapable of giving birth. So how did Daniel be successful? How is Daniel successful in getting pigs if it can't be done? That's what the Gemara says. And says the Gemara, Zutri. He was bringing small ones, baby pigs. I sees what he brought, Beloy Detayu, without the Egyptians' knowledge. So not only was he going to bring pigs from Egypt, he was smuggling them. He was smuggling baby pigs out of Egypt. View number 3.
There's no kashrut issue here.
He's looking for going.
Not for him. He's bringing it.
From Nebuchadnezzar.
He's bringing it from Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah. I agree that it's very.
This is the Gemara, and I should tell you, I'm putting it out there.
Of course,
I have to give some. I'm letting it ruminate and try to think of how this would match up with the 3 views mentioned before.
Good fun by ruminate, because the pig doesn't ruminate; it has the split.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, right. We had the one who said that Chanania Mishael and Azaria died of jealousy from other Jews is the same one who says that Daniel was digging a well in Tiberias. The one who said that Chanania Mishael and Azaria, after this story, died of the spittle of the nations because they were mocking the Jews, is the same one who said that he went to go get alfalfa seed, which is animal fodder. And the one who said that Chanania Mishael and Azaria emigrated to Israel and survived is the same sage who says that Daniel was smuggling baby pigs out of Alexandria. So see if you can make them align. So in order to give a full picture, we'll conclude with the last couple lines of Gemara, which are going to paint the complete picture of the story of Daniel disappearing and not being there when his brethren are being thrown into a furnace. He's not around. So says the Gemara, why wasn't he there? Okay, so now we know where he was, 3 views, but why wasn't he there? So the Gemara says like this: Tanur Rabbanan, our sages taught. This is Mishnah H text. There were 3 different parties involved in this plan of making sure Daniel is not present at the time when the Chanania Mishael and Azaria are being thrown into the furnace. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the first party involved in this plan. Daniel himself is involved in the plan. For Nebuchadnezzar and King Nebuchadnezzar. So what was the reason for each of these parties to make sure that Daniel wasn't there? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar, God decided to organize that Daniel wouldn't be there. Why? Because Nizal Daniel Mahacha, let Daniel leave this place, so that people should not say, it's not so that they were saved by his merit. In other words, had Nebuchadnezzar thrown all 4 of them into the furnace, and they would have survived, people would have said, Daniel is so great that he's protecting the other 3. And God wanted to show that these 3 themselves were worthy of being saved. And therefore Hashem wanted to have Daniel away. Option 1 party. For Daniel, why wasn't Daniel himself there? Daniel, in his free choice, should have chosen to stick with his brethren. Why was he gone? So Amar Daniel said, Ezel Mahacha, I should leave here. He was happy to go on one of these trips, whatever 3 views there are. And why am I leaving here? So that there shouldn't be fulfilled in me the verse, there's a verse which says that one should burn, or the idols of the nations should be burnt in fire. And Daniel himself was worshipped by Nebuchadnezzar. The story in Daniel is very fascinating. You can read it, how Daniel helped Nebuchadnezzar and gave him a wise counsel. So Nebuchadnezzar worshipped him. and he was seen as like a demigod. So Daniel was worried that if he would be thrown into the furnace by Nebuchadnezzar, it would kind of be a fulfillment of a verse which doesn't belong to him. It's a fulfillment of a verse belonging to actual idols. He didn't want to put himself in a position where he was being perceived as an idol that through him is being fulfilled the verse to burn idols. That's what the Gemara says. So Nebuchadnezzar, that's party number 2. So there are 3 parties involved in Daniel's escape. God said, I don't want people to think that Daniel is the one who's saving them. I want people to know that Chanania Mishael and Azaria have their own merit. And Daniel himself doesn't want to be there because he doesn't want people to think that he's an idol that's being thrown into the furnace, as the verse says, to throw idols in the furnace. And the party number 3 is Nebuchadnezzar himself. Why didn't he want Daniel there? Amar, Nebuchadnezzar said to himself, Yezel Daniel Mahacha, let Daniel leave here. People shouldn't say, he threw his own God into the fire. Because he's been worshipping, so to speak, Daniel. Not necessarily as an actual god, maybe it's a demigod or whatever it is, but he's worshipping Daniel, and he doesn't want people to say that he's throwing his own God into the fire. Now, how do we know that Nebuchadnezzar worshipped Daniel? The verse reads, Ba'adin Malka Nebuchadnezzar, I don't know how you translate the word Ba'adin. At that time, in the time of the king Nebuchadnezzar, Nafal al Anpoe, he fell down on his face in the presence of Daniel. Well, Daniel sagid, and towards Daniel he worshipped. Goymer, etc. And discussion on where Chanania Mishael and Azaria went, and where they went after they came out of the furnace, and where Daniel was during the furnace. Obviously, this leaves much more to some thought, and you have homework. Spend the next 24 hours thinking about what this might mean, and come back.
Hacking your brain to find the connection.
Find some connection between all these Gemaras, what this means. Have a look at the commentaries, see what we can come up with.
Very good assignment. Thank you.
All right. Wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.